everyone. Welcome to the Exhibition Kitchen virtual session. And we're so excited to have you here. I first off just want to thank you again for making it to one of our lovely last ones of the season. We're very excited for this dynamic duo. We are going to be introducing the lovely authors of the Berkshires Farm Table Cookbook, Elisa Spungen Bildner and Robert Bildner. And just to let everyone know, please stick around to the end for some fun little possible giveaways that may be on theme for this. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over and let's get started.
Okay. Hi, I'm Elisa Spungen Bildner.
And I'm Rob Bildner.
And we're going to introduce our session. First of all, we're very thrilled to be here. And by the way, welcome to a friend of ours who I see is on, and wonderful esteemed Northeastern alum, Steve Bucciani. We're going to introduce our cookbook with a short video that'll give you a little background on what we're doing, and then talk for a few minutes before we demo. Or I should say before Chef Tom.
Yeah, so Eric, if you guys wouldn't mind rolling the video, that'd be terrific.
Thanks so much. In our new book, the Berkshires Farm Table Cookbook,
you would like me to do that.
You'll meet some of the remarkable farmers and chefs who play a heroic role in preserving the agricultural community of the area. That is, the Berkshire Hills of Western Massachusetts and neighboring New York, Vermont, and Connecticut. We tell the stories of 42 of them with personal profiles, striking photographs, and 125 kitchen-tested recipes highlighting fresh ingredients, all inspired by or created by these farmers and chefs. The story this book tells, and the recipes, offer a picture of small family farms that go well beyond this region. This area is a special place, attracting visitors from across the country. It's known for its homegrown food and farm-to-table tradition, as well as its world-class scenery and culture. The mission of our book, the Berkshires Farm Table Cookbook, is to highlight the people, places, and things that make this region so special, and the story of small family farms. The dedicated farmers and farm-to-table chefs we write about are committed to producing food that is tastier and healthier than what's often found in the supermarket by maintaining healthy soil and farming and producing food sustainably. And, as importantly, the meat farmers we interviewed are consistently concerned with treating their animals humanely.
It's tough to do this work. The farmers we interviewed are motivated to farm for environmental, social, political, health, lifestyle, and even spiritual reasons, often sacrificing a comfortable living for their values. Who could foresee when we began our journey 4 years ago to write the Berkshires Farm Table Cookbook that its mission to inspire consumers to buy local would be more important than ever when it came out in May 2020. During this time and beyond, we need to support these hardworking and principled people. Our book, website, and Facebook page suggest ways you can buy their products even now. I'm Rob Bildner.
And I'm Elisa Spungen Bildner.
Our new cookbook, the Berkshires Farm Table Cookbook, sheds light on the farmers and the farms of the Berkshires of Western Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New York. Thanks so much. That's great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we just, I'd like to add that the Berkshire celebrity chef, Brian Alberg, who's a former executive chef of the Red Lion Inn, and now he's at the Break Room in North Adams, Mass., worked with us to create most of the recipes, which are inspired by what the farmers grow or raise or what they told us in interviews. And I'm also proud to mention that we were honored last week as the New England Cookbook of the Year by the Readable Feast. And we're also honored in the category of single topic, in this case, local farming. So first, just a little more background about us. We've been very full part-time residents of the Berkshires for 35 plus years. While we both trained as lawyers, most of our professional career has been in the food business. I'm third generation. My grandparents founded a supermarket company, King's Supermarkets in New Jersey, and I founded and ran two food companies that distributed fresh produce and specialty foods and helped farmers bring their products to market. Our son Rafi, who graduated from Le Cordon Bleu before college, is a master artisanal pizza maker under his brand Hilltown Hot Pies, recently mentioned in the New York Times. And his brother Ari ran a craft brewery and consults in the wine business. So the two comprise the fourth generation. After I sold our companies, I studied photography. Elisa, a former journalist and journalism professor, and a trained chef with the Masters of Science in Nutrition, ran another one of our companies that produced value-added produce.
Rob neglected to mention that I got my start in the food business as a bagger in a grocery store growing up in Chicago. And that also I'll mention to all of you that I fell in love with Massachusetts when I came out here from Chicago, never having been here many years ago, for 2 years as a student at Smith College. So our cookbook has another goal besides helping readers create great food, and that's to give you compelling reasons, and a little bit in the video, about ways to buy any locally grown and raised food, whether it's in the Berkshires or wherever you're located, and to know how your food is produced, to know the farmer behind your food. We'll tell you a really brief story or two about farmers we've profiled, which will give you a little more insight into why we feel buying local and sustainable or certified organic is so important, and why you should support small family farms that farm according to these principles. First, just a quick note on how we ended up writing the book. So we have 4 kids, and Rafi is the youngest of our 4 kids and an artisanal pizza chef who started gardening our Beckett, Massachusetts backyard each summer in middle school, selling his produce at a roadside stand in front of our house with a on your honor, cash box or whatever. And then in high school, he spent a summer in Berkshire, Vermont at the Mountain School, which teaches high school juniors how to farm. Came back, and the following 2 summers, he transformed his and our Beckett backyard into October Mountain Farm, which was an intensively cultivated, sustainable half-acre of lettuce, tomatoes, more exotic produce, and he would sell them now at farmers markets in the area. We used to visit Rafi at these markets, and we really marveled at his rhubarb and his kale and whatever it was, but we were super aware of the long hours and the grueling work that it took to get this produce ready to sell at a farmer's market. Occasionally a friend of his would come and help him out. And I remember one friend who said, after killing himself, he said, under union rules, do I get a lunch break?
So why did we write the book? Because at these markets, we met local farmers, and we were moved by stories of how they came to farm and their challenges, their commitment to the soil, the environment, to producing clean, healthy food, and of course, food that tastes good. As one farmer we interviewed, Amelia Conklin of Skyview Farm in Sheffield, put it, quote, anybody that's eaten a carrot that's fresh and local and grown organically or sustainably versus a carrot that's traveled 1,200 miles or more knows the taste is just so different. We thought a cookbook based on what the Berkshires grows and raises would offer one way to support these local farmers who are often hidden from view, who may not intersect with their own lives, people who bring us food they lovingly produce, and often at great financial sacrifice. So Lisa grabbed her MacBook Pro, I grabbed a digital recorder and my Nikon camera, and we traipsed down relatively untraveled dirt roads in the Berkshires for over 5 years to interview farmers in their fields while they harvested their watercress or fed their pigs.
So first farm story. This is Hawkdance Farm. The night before we visited this farm owners, Damon Clift and Diane Creed, just finished their dinner of beet pancakes. And beets are just one of 90 crops that they grow on their 3-acre farm. Totally opposite of Big Ag, which grows, corn and soybeans on the same soil over and over. Damon and Diane's beet pancakes, by the way, inspired our recipe for beet and goat cheese latkes, which Chef Tom is going to demo momentarily. Hillsdale, where Hawkdance is located, is 120 miles from Queens, where Damon and Diane used to live. He was a house painter, she was a vet tech and owned a pet sitting business, and they were very moved by Back to the Landers, Scott and Helen Nearing, and organic soil advocate Alec Coleman, and they moved upstate to start Hawkdance. The pair farm sustainably. They don't use chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, which goes way beyond USDA organic certification. They farm by hand, they barely till the soil, and no-till farming allows the soil to retain carbon or organic matter, which is much better for the soil and the atmosphere. The two are adamant about farming and living their ideals, being in tune with the earth, as they say. They only use organic, non-GMO seeds. As Diane says, we believe in supporting that kind of food because I don't want to be a genetic experiment, and I don't want my customers to be either. And she said, everything we grow is done with such care and such love. We want people to feel that when they eat it. We want them to feel when they bite into one of our tomatoes, the joy we feel when we eat it, how delicious it is, and how hard it was to get the tomatoes to grow to that state. One of their customers wrote on Facebook, let me know when you have more cherry tomatoes. Lucy and I ate all of ours in just, an hour today. So just a brief sort of coda. It's really hard to farm. We found it with Rafi, and we found it with Diane and Damon and every farmer we interviewed. It took them years before they made $3,000 of profit. But when you ask them, they're really happy they did what they did.
And then kind of the last farm we may talk about one more, is Caretaker Farm, which, just so you know, inspired our recipe for rutabaga latkes, which you'll see in a moment. Caretaker is a 35-acre sustainable farm in Williamstown and grows over 100 varieties of vegetables, fruit, and flowers. And what do we mean when we say farmers farm sustainably? That they promote farming practices that are environmentally sound and good for farmers and their communities. At Caretaker, composting, cover crops, mulching, cloth row covers, and other methods are used to nourish and protect the soil. They don't even use the chemicals allowed under USDA standards. What we love about Caretaker is it's all about community. But for their community, farmers Don and Bridget wouldn't have had the opportunity to farm and keep a beautiful large piece of Berkshire property undeveloped. They bought the farm in 2006 after seeing it listed in a farming magazine, but only after a number of nonprofits helped them acquire the land along with funds raised by the community. For those who want to start a small farm, affording land is often the biggest obstacle. The farm itself is a community of over 270 CSA members. Not true at all CSAs. Caretaker members are required to do a little work on the farm. As Don told us, quote, doesn't matter if you have a PhD or you're a doctor, you're on food stamps, everyone is learning how to harvest potatoes and weed the carrots. It's a really neat way for people to connect over those jobs.
So we're going to stop our farm stories here, and just I hope after hearing them, as thumbnail as they were, that you get a sense, and with the video, of why supporting them, why supporting small family farms in general is so important for all the reasons that we spoke about. It's important for better tasting produce, for the environment, the soil, the air, for the land that's safe from development, for the community that's Caretaker, that's supported by these farms, for better nutrition, because this is food that's not been schlepped, frankly, across the country. And also, as we mentioned in the video, for more humane treatment of the animals. But this is a cookbook, so we're going to move to our demo. And I'll talk a little bit as we're moving into the demo about our philosophy of the cookbook. So Eric, if you want to shift over to Chef Tom, that would be great. And we can just speak a little bit as we're shifting over. But as I mentioned, this is a cookbook as well as a story about farms. And just a moment on this, our recipes are purposely very accessible. They are easy. Florence Fabricant in the New York Times, which featured our book, said, these are simple recipes. We want the ingredients that these farmers produce, that buying local helps chefs in what they cook really speak for the dish. Each recipe highlights something that's grown or raised on a farm. The ingredients are not esoteric, I promise. And we also want to, people to also try it at the same time, some a little more unusual fruits and vegetables, like I'll show you rutabaga latkes in a little moment. Let me shift over to Chef Tom. Chef?
Hi, everyone. Well, thanks very much. That was awesome. I love that video. And thanks very much, everyone, for joining us. So a couple things that we're going to make out of the book today. We're going to make a fresh applesauce. Obviously, we've got, we're on one hand past apple season, but I think we've got some, plenty of local places. We've got some, cold storage available. So we got some, I'm going to show you how to make a fresh applesauce. Then we're going to make a root vegetable latke with some beets, carrots, celery, and potatoes. So I think the first thing we'll do is get started with our applesauce, and while that's sort of slowly simmering, we can put that off to the side and kind of concentrate on the other item. So I've already quartered and peeled and cored and cut up the apples a little bit, and so now we're just going to add a little bit of either apple juice or cider, whatever you have. I've got a little bit of cinnamon. I've got just a pinch of nutmeg. And we've got some vanilla extract. And so we're just going to bring that up to a little simmer. I think we want to give it maybe a little bit of stir to kind of distribute the ingredients.
Yeah, what kind of apples are you using? I'm curious.
Yeah, good question. Thank you. So those are Gala apples.
Great.
Is there any others that you recommend?
No, actually, it's funny. I mean, I use anything, but honestly, if you can get Galas or sweet apple, it really helps you not have to add any sugar. And the recipe in the cookbook, which is again very simple, doesn't add any sugar. I will be honest, because sometimes I'm a little bit of a sweet fanatic. I'll throw in a little bit of stevia just to make it a little sweeter, but I just never put in sugar. And there are purists, Chef and I were speaking right before we started, there are purists who don't add any spices to their apple. I happen to be one that happens to like a little bit of, as you say, nutmeg and cinnamon, but thank you.
Sure. Well, it's funny you say that, because I do have some sugar here, but you'll notice I didn't add it yet. Because we don't know, we want to see what it tastes like before we add, before we add our seasoning. In this case, sugar. It may not need it. May need a little help, it may not, so.
Yeah, and listen, I've got a whole bunch of Portland apples right now from going apple picking. I have bushels of apples actually in my refrigerator, one of our refrigerators in a garage. And the truth is, Portland's are a little bit on the sour side. So yeah, that's when I throw in my stevia. The other thing I'll mention, I honestly think that homemade applesauce is so easy to make that there's almost like zero reason, sorry Mots, to buy it in the store. And I also mentioned, by the way, I should also mention I use organic apples as well. And don't tell people I know, but when I'm on Zoom calls, I literally sit with a bucket of apples, peeling the skins under the table so no one sees, and then just throw them into a pot when I'm through. Anyway, not suggesting that if you're in the middle of your job, but you never know.
Right. Yeah, so we're just going to put that off to the side. We're going to let that simmer a little bit, and then we're going to move on to our latkes.
Sounds good.
So I have pre-shredded, I've got some beets here, some fresh beets. We've got some fresh carrots. We have some celery root, which, I don't know, I kind of think is one of those kind of similar to parsnips in a way that they're misunderstood vegetable.
Agree more. Happy to talk about it.
Yeah. And so for those of you who may not know what a celeriac looks like, I've got one here. So on one hand, it's not, the prettiest thing, but it is delicious. It tastes just like celery. It's got a firm texture, like, similar to a potato or, that kind of thing. But it's, and that's what this white is here. You can see the, shreds, very easily, similar to a carrot. And then I'm also going to add some potato to it. I didn't want to do it ahead of time, just so it wouldn't oxidize or turn color. So we're just going to quickly peel this.
Do you put your potatoes when you grate them beforehand just in water to hold them from oxidizing?
I mean, it depends. I showed the idea of, for our demo today doing that, but I think we, and correct me if you feel differently, but I kind of think we want the starch. I think by shredding it and, or even just peeling it, sometimes that washes away some of the starch. And I know that we're going to be adding some flour to this, which will help to hold it together. But I think we want some of the natural starch as well.
Agreed. And since these are non-potato latkes, we need the starch.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking about skins, I'm just going to answer while you're doing this. Sugar apples, I hate doing box graters. Somebody asked about removing the skins on applesauce, and I just want to say, I don't. There are times I'll make applesauce without removing the skins, but it can get very, some of the other skin pieces. You don't have to.
Potato skins.
I generally do, but although I use organic potatoes, you could probably not do them as well. I don't know how you feel, Chef, about removing potatoes.
Well, sometimes we do. The carrot here actually has the skin on it. So if some of there's a little of the dark spots is from the peel. As you know, that it can be very nutritious and full of flavor. So some things will peel, some things we kind of feel like we like to leave them on.
No,
so what I'm going to do is just squeeze the juice out of the, as I did with the other vegetables before. We just squeeze some of the juice out of the potatoes here, and we're going to add them in. I think actually that could take maybe a little more potato.
So I have to admit, I am totally lazy, and I am one of the laziest chefs around, cooks around. And the truth is, I use the food processor to grate. I did start with box graters, but I want to save my knuckles. And kudos to you that you're going to sacrifice them. I'm not, to be honest with you, and it's going to take such a second. Right. But my mother, of blessed memory, would be doing the box grater as well, just so you know.
Gotcha. Well, if we had a large amount to do, we would certainly use some kind of mechanical thing. But for this, I think goes pretty quick. Yeah. So we're going to add to our vegetables. We have some fresh thyme. We have some scallions, some chopped scallion, and we are going to mix that.
So while you're doing that, I'm just going to mention the beets issue, if you don't mind, while you're mixing them, because I'm thinking your hands are going to get red. So, and I'm happy to talk about more of the ingredients when you start to fry them, or pan fry them. But again, being a lazy cook, I hate to get my hands, so red with the beets. So I'll either put oil on my hands, sometimes use gloves like you're doing. Very useful, particularly in COVID. I got a million pairs of them. Or just on my cutting board, we'll put, a piece of parchment if you want to keep the red from the cutting board. Or if you're honestly, you could use non-red colored beets if you really have a beet issue. Just a few other mentions while you're doing that. You could probably, of course, sub in dry thyme. I feel in COVID, we always have to talk about making substitutions. You can always substitute, a teaspoon of dry for the tablespoon of fresh. It says kosher salts. Kosher salt's less salty, so of course, make that substitution if you don't have kosher salt. Carrots, I like to use a whole bunch of different colored carrots if you have them. If not, don't worry. And I love the fact that you spoke about celery root, because I think it's one of the most maligned vegetables, along with rutabaga and kohlrabi and a whole bunch of other stuff that doesn't look so pretty. And there's actually in our cookbook, there's a recipe for celery root soup, which is fabulous. It's a really sweet vegetable. The only thing I'll mention about celery root, because it's very hard to peel, it's not very hard to peel, take that back. You can't take a peeler usually and peel it. And so, we want to cut off like the end of it with the stringy stuff, take a chef's knife and just starting from the top, just follow the curve of the celery root and take off the skin. And if you take off more than the skin, it's again, totally fine too. So I just thought I'd mention those while you're doing it.
Excellent. Yeah, so you may have noticed that we've got a little bit of flour that we kind of dusted with, and we also added some egg and some of the goat cheese that you spoke about a little bit earlier.
So the goat cheese in our area that we use, one of the local ones, which I don't know if you can get in Boston or not, but it's Rossenbrook.
I don't think so.
Oh yeah, okay.
They're fantastic, yeah.
And again, local.
Of course, I'm getting very hungry as we're going on here. I'll just put that out there. I love goat cheese too.
Oh.
And just while you're doing it, I'll just mention a little bit about just latkes as a background. So latkes is the Yiddish word, and it's considered, a Hanukkah, whatever, although I'd like to point out that in the story of Hanukkah, they didn't have potatoes, I guarantee you, in, 163 BC. So this was not strictly, from Hanukkah then, and became popular actually, I think in Italy, as cheese pancakes. And only when potatoes were introduced into Europe, or after, I think they were introduced in Europe in the 16th century, but introduced into Eastern Europe much later, that people started making, these are fritters. These are potato fritters, making them with, making with potatoes. And it became the story of Hanukkah because we now fry them, they didn't do it in Europe, in olive oil or whatever oil. I actually use organic canola oil, but whatever you use is fine as long as it can take high heat. But in Europe, they were using schmaltz, which is rendered fat from chickens and beef and whatever. And my nutritionist background, and I will be honest with you, I am a vegetarian actually, although this cookbook is not vegetarian by a long shot. I probably would not recommend using schmaltz, but just thought I'd mention it. It will make them taste great.
But the connection to Hanukkah, the connection to Hanukkah is the story of Hanukkah is how the oil in the temple lasted the 8 days, though there was very little. So oil plays a very important role in the Hanukkah story. So the connection with latkes is that the latkes is fried in the oil. And another Hanukkah treat are donuts, which are also cooked in oil. So that's why they're now considered Hanukkah.
Right, but they didn't have this kind of oil in Europe.
Yeah, no,
olive oil was not known in Russia. So, this has been sort of it's a little bit of a legend. So, Chef Tom, feel free to talk about what you're doing.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so again, we just kind of formed it. Again, we tried to gently mix the two to incorporate the eggs and the cheese and all the vegetables together.
Yeah, it looks terrific.
And we heated a little bit of olive oil, and I think we want some, good heavy bottom pan. Doesn't have to be cast iron, but we're fortunate to have a set here, so we're going to use those. And we just, want to cook it till they're nice and brown on one side. We'll flip them over.
Yeah.
At the same time, we're going to keep an eye on our apples here. Ideally, I guess this should be covered a little. Ideally, I guess these apples should be covered a little bit so they could, what we call them, sweat a little bit.
Right.
But I think it'll be
work
fine.
both ways, but of course. I'll just mention, Chef, since we're looking at, and I'm envious of your kitchen.
Yes, I am too.
I want to borrow it because I think I told the chef what my son Rafi and I did a video demo of latkes, which we are not showing because it was terrible because we're doing our home kitchen, which just doesn't look like that. But I do want to mention one thing. I mentioned the oil. You really need oil that can take high heat. But two other things I point out. One is, if you notice, Chef did not put a ton of latkes in the pan, because if you start putting and again, I'm a lazy cook. I'd like to pack every single latke or fritter in the pan as I could, so I don't have to do so many batches. But the truth is, then they'll start steaming and not frying. And so you don't want to do that. And the second thing is, again, this is me and this is my nutrition background. I don't deep fry, and I know you're not either. I use a really relatively small amount of organic canola oil, which can take high heat, and in effect, pan fry them. But a true, fritter / latke kind of aficionado would say, oh no, I need a minimum of quarter, ½ inch of oil. Really, no, that's not me. So you guys, up to you.
Yeah, I've seen different recipes along the way. It's funny you say that. Some using, different oils, some using, different amounts of oil. So that was a great kind of description of the oil that you gave.
Well, it's a great in the pan.
By the way, I'll just mention, I read an article, I'll mention this to the audience. It was from 2015. It was from a blog from a farm called Early Morning Farm, if anybody wants to look online. And it's how to make a latke without a recipe. And latkes or fritters are one of those foods that you can prepare, and they're like a canvas for anything that you have. So again, during COVID days, and you're not going shopping every second, look in your refrigerator, you can sub in, and this is one of the premises of our cookbook, you can sub in absolutely anything that you want. So this particular very nice little blog post or whatever, how to make a latke without a recipe. And they give a template for making a latke, which basically says quarter cup of flour, which I think is what is the same as in our recipe. They use only about 4 cups of vegetables. We use more. Again, it's not going to matter. You're going to play around with the binding to see how much flour you need anyway. They use 2 eggs, which will help bind it. We use 1 egg. Again, you can use anything you want, either with our recipe or this particular template to make latkes. And this is written by a farm, and they said for their CSAs, they hand out this recipe template because it's a way for people who get all these CSA ingredients and they say, what in the world am I going to do with them? And what is this? Use them in, a fritter / latke. You can use anything.
Great. So because I don't have a cover for my apples, I guess I did just add a little spritz of water there to kind of help with the breaking down. I think, again, it would just, if you had a cover, it would keep all the steam we see escaping. It would kind of hold that in and help to really, cook these apples. So that's the reason for just a little spritz of water. If you had a little more, apple juice or apple cider, that would be fine as well. All right, so my pan here was a little too hot, so you can see that it's a little maybe darker on some sides. My induction stove here, usually the cast iron is pretty good and pretty evenly heated, but this one seems to have a couple of hot spots, I guess. But I did turn the heat down a little bit. But we want to get some good color. We want to make sure our vegetables are cooked, even though they're pretty thin, from grating them. And you may also see that I've got my kind of a platter or plate with a paper towel, because we want to drain some of that oil before we serve it.
Right, really important, because you don't want sloppy, mushy latkes, which is why you don't crop the pan. You have the wringing out of the water from the vegetables is probably one of the most essential things. Not letting things oxidize is really important. Chef, let me ask you, just in terms of timing, how you'd like to work this. Whenever you want me to switch over and do the Ganache demo for a few minutes and then come back to finished product, you tell me, however you like to do it.
I don't know. You can, I mean, I think we need a few more minutes here to crisp these up, and I think our apples need a little more time. So if you want to, do that, that's fine. Okay,
so I'm going to switch. So and just come back to me whenever you want. I'm just switching to another camera so that I can talk a little bit about Ganache, which is a great, super easy holiday kind of dessert. And we use, Rob will speak about this later. We use local creamery. Let me just switch over cameras for a second. Okay. So guys, hi. So thank you so much, Chef, and just again, call me back when you need to. I'm just going to show you the rutabaga latkes, which without them sliding off the plate, with my little sprigs of thyme, which Rob had mentioned. And these are also wonderful, wonderful latkes, so alternate with any other root vegetables you want. Very same principles apply, so I'll mention that. I do happen to have some finished beet latkes, which are not going to look as good as Chef Tom's, because mine are coming out of the freezer. Some applesauce also coming out of the freezer. Again, I just keep stacks of it in the freezer. But let me speak a little bit about Ganache, which is one of the recipes in our book. So chocolate ganache, which is basically just chocolate and cream, is a phenomenal holiday dessert. I make mine either with wonderful chocolate, like here's tart, great chocolate, all dark chocolate, and dark chocolate, anything above about 36% cocoa solids. Again, because I just prefer to cook without sugar, I often use something called Lily's dark chocolate baking chips, which no sugar added, done with stevia. And honestly, it's a sugarless dessert. So great if there's a diabetic, person, somebody has to watch their blood sugar. Somebody in one of the presentations I did really excoriated me because I'm using chocolate chips. So just a word on chocolate chips. Yes, baking chocolate is probably better to use because it doesn't have emulsifiers. I have no problem, honestly, using chocolate chips, either Guittard or the Lily's. It melts immediately. And honestly, again, I'm a lazy person, so I have always chocolate chips on hand. I don't always have baking bars. If you're using baking bars, you have to really chop them up because otherwise it won't melt. So the recipe is this. First, I prepare a 9 by 9 inch pan with parchment paper and then pour the ganache, and this is some finished ganache, into it. Why? Because when I can take it out with the parchment, I don't even mess up my pan. It's really easy. Nothing breaks off. And I have some brownies here, by the way, which I'll mention, which I can make the same way. Parchment the pan, pull them out, and easy, much easier to cut them. It really works well. So ganache, take some cream from wonderful local dairy, heavy cream or cream, not light cream, not light whipping cream. They're totally different. This is ultra pasteurized cream, ultra pasteurized. This is pasteurized cream, which is far more easy to find with a local dairy. Ultra pasteurized cream, which is what you find in the commercial big ag kind of, dairy production, is different. It's just not as good, in all honesty. So I love using my local cream. Again, try to find pasteurized, not ultra pasteurized, and it's got to be heavy cream or cream, but heavy whipping cream. Okay. Boil it or come almost to a boil, but heat it up. Don't let it burn. Pour a tiny bit of vanilla in it, and I use organic vanilla. Take it. I put in my chocolate chips in a bowl, very near the stove, 14 ounces of chocolate chips. And by the way, I'm nuts about measuring things out. I use my favorite kitchen gadget, aside from a Vitamix I will mention, is a kitchen scale. This is a super big one. So you can measure out exactly what you need, and take the hot cream, pour it over the chocolate chips, which have been measured out. Give it a couple seconds or so, so that it can really seep in and start melting the chocolate. Start stirring it and melting the chocolate. I find it melts really quick. And with ganache, depending on what you want it to come out, you have to work really quickly, because it will, again, hardly any ingredients, but you want to make sure you do it right. You want to stir it and keep stirring it so that it doesn't harden quickly, which it will. I add, in our recipe, I mentioned dried cranberries. I happen to have become much more fond now of organic dried blueberries, which gives it a really nice texture. And I pour in the blueberries too, mix it up, pour it into the set pan that I mentioned, and put it in the refrigerator for an hour or so. Can't put it in the freezer right away. It will not gel the way it's supposed to. After an hour, just lift it out, stick my knife in hot water, cut it, and I've got finished ganache squares, which is what these are. It's always hard to show things on a TV screen, but that's the story of ganache. And again, moving quickly is key. And above all, and this goes to, again, the theory of our cookbook, if you use the best ingredients, you're going to get phenomenal ganache. And that means using the best heavy cream and, frankly, the best chocolate that you can find. Or, again, if you want to do the sugarless too. Okay, let me stop there. Chef Tom, let me go back to you.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I was going to show
Great.
one more dessert. Really up to you.
Oh,
Sure.
okay.
Yeah, maybe later. Okay.
Then I can talk about the farm.
Yeah, why don't you talk about the farm? Rob can talk about the farm as well.
I'll just mention very briefly that this recipe is inspired by High Lawn Farm in Lee, and it's a small dairy. There are 350 Jersey cows, which 120 are milked. It's been owned by the Wild family since 1935, which is a very prominent family, actually descended from railroad tycoon Cornelius Vanderbilt. But the current generation plant will keep it as a small-scale dairy farm. It's the last Berkshire County dairy to process its own milk, and it delivers products ranging from skim, low-fat, whole and chocolate milk, to the heavy cream and butter, to ice cream, and even seasonal eggnog and cheeses. They're a major booster of Jersey cows and their milk. They believe that Jersey cow's milk is more nutritious than other milks, and it's a richer tasting milk. And their cows are exceptionally sweet and gentle compared to pet dogs. Their general manager says they want to go over to you, lick you, and push you. So maybe I'll just have, High Lawn sells all over in the Berkshires, local markets, Boston, and so forth, Boston. And they even have a farm store now where you can get their products, and they have a scoop shop. So I think I'll stop.
Just one more thing about High Lawn and the Jersey cows. Roberto, who's the manager, says that he really is lactose intolerant. And he says, but he can eat anything from the Jersey cows, that they're, for whatever reason, it's more digestible. And he can have, he could eat the ganache, the cream, the ice cream that they produce, etc. Again, I'm not lactose intolerant, but, try it.
Yeah, I'll turn it back to you.
That's really interesting about the.
Whoops, I think we're not hearing Chef Tom.
Oh.
Okay, you're right. Okay, we hear you.
Good to go? Okay.
Yeah,
No, I was just saying.
Yeah.
No, I was just saying that it was interesting to hear you talk about the lactose and that person being able to have,
Yeah,
being able to.
And I'll mention, somebody asked in the chat the name of the farm, High Lawn Farm. I am quite sure you can buy High Lawn milk products, dairy products in Boston. I'm quite sure about that, but if not,
okay,
reach out to us and we can find them for you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great. So you can see the apples are pretty much really starting to break down. And so what we're going to do at this point, you can use a food processor or blender if you have one, but we've got this fancy burr mixer or stick blender. It's got a few different names, and we just want to do it to kind of the desired consistency. If you like it really super smooth, then you'd spend more time doing it. If you like it a little rustic or a little less smooth, that's fine too. But you can see how it breaks down. Yeah, so I think you get the idea. But we're also going to, as I mentioned, give it a taste. Well,
Do you like it? I'll make sure you like what you're cooking.
a little tangled up here. Yes, I mean for me maybe just a like you said, maybe you have a sweet tooth. I certainly do. It's maybe just a little bit of sugar.
Okay. I'm not paid by the stevia manufacturers to say stevia. Again, it's just me trying to cut sugar down. I also mentioned, because again, having mentioned that I'm the laziest person to cook around, which I jokingly say, but sort of true. I think I mentioned earlier that one of my favorite kitchen appliances, besides my kitchen scale, is a Vitamix, a high-speed,
Oh, there you go.
blender. And I just honestly throw it into the Vitamix, which you have to be careful when you're using a high-speed blender that you really control what you're doing, because you'll end up, I happen to like really chunky applesauce, so you pulse it. I know, Chef Tom, you said earlier you like it smooth. Vitamix will make it smooth in a nanosecond.
Yeah, off camera, we've got a really nice Vitamix also, but you said we opted for the the burn mix. But you get the idea. So this is definitely kind of chunky, but I think everybody gets the idea. So now we're gonna maybe plate up a little bit. So we've been draining these beautiful pancakes.
Oh wow!
You can kind of see how they've some of the oil has been absorbed. I think there's probably a couple more that are ready to be drained.
They look really nice. I love serving things on white. It just such a difference.
Exactly.
I don't have that kind of white plates that you do, but for serving that looks really lovely. And the color looks great. Somebody just asked us in the chat.
I'm responding in the chat. I'm going to give the link to our website, which has the video that we played at the beginning of the talk, plus some other videos. So I'll just send the link to you now.
I don't know if it's Jean or Jeannie. I'm not sure how you pronounce your name. You were the very kind person who asked about the skins on apples and potatoes. And of course, now I'm going to start making my latkes without taking the skins off, because frankly, from a nutritional point of view, it's better anyway. But I'd love to, play with that a little bit more. But excuse me, you had mentioned that you didn't see the video, so I don't know if other people had problems as well.
I'm literally just
right. So feel free to.
So also you can see the video that we showed. It's actually, if you go to the Amazon listing for our book, at the bottom of that, you click on our Amazon our book, and on the bottom you'll see a link to that video, which is the tour of the cookbook. So that's probably the easiest way for you to see it again.
Chef Tom, I love your plating, and it looks beautiful the way you do it. I do want to mention that when I was in chef school, I thought plating was probably the hardest thing to do. I'm totally in awe of people who plate so nicely.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
I know, it's beautiful.
Goodness. Oh my goodness.
I know.
Thank you. And this is the applesauce I made ahead of time. And maybe
I'm taking a photo of that. I apologize, but you're going to see.
I want to say, when I was in chef school, there
was
a woman who was in my class. I don't recall her name, who was incredibly talented. She had been a barista at Starbucks, and she learned to make things really beautiful at Starbucks, and she would plate things, and I would just fall over. I'm looking at this and say, wow.
That's talent.
That's such talent, and I really appreciate it.
Northeastern, you're very lucky you have Chef Tom. That's all I can say.
I'm coming to you
I
in
know.
your kitchen.
I can't wait.
I'm sorry for all my guests. We do a lot of entertaining.
I can't wait till we can show up in your kitchen.
I know, and I, of course, will play it now exactly like you.
Anytime, you're welcome anytime.
That's so beautiful. That's gorgeous.
Yeah, so that's, we'll take these last few out. And that's
maybe
much what we have here.
Eric and the team will have a nice luck as
Oh yeah, definitely.
really truly
Definitely.
beautiful.
Beautiful, beautiful, lovely.
I'm just curious, did you
Well,
find
thank you
that
for
there
such
was
a
enough?
great, I'm sorry?
I was gonna say, did you find, was there enough binder with a quarter cup of flour for you and the one egg?
Yeah, and I didn't use all the flour. To be honest with you, I cut the recipe in half.
Oh, okay.
So, could it have taken maybe a little bit of flour, maybe, but I think, like I said, I was trying to let the natural starches also work to our advantage. But thank you for such a great recipe
Well,
from your
Thank
book.
you for
It's
preparing
awesome.
it, yeah. And we're happy to
Yeah.
answer any questions, Erica, in whatever remaining time we have. And so we can turn it back to you, but it's beautiful, Tom.
Thank you so much. What a great job.
Thank you.
I
Oh, my
learned
pleasure,
and
my
really
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Major thumbs up.
Thank you.
Thanks.
No, really awesome. That was, it smells so good. I wish everyone could be in here in this
Yeah.
kitchen because
I
it
know.
smells so darn good. So I had a question, of course. I think it's so interesting that I was very lucky to have read the book before I got to meet all of you and to see all these recipes. But how did you organize your book and how did you come up with your recipes?
So, okay, thank you.
Great question.
Good question. So the recipes, as mentioned, they're inspired by the farmers. When we first started this book, and honestly, we said 5 years, this was about 7 years ago. We didn't do it straight, so I can't tell you the total number of years, but it was many years because every time we talked to another chef, both chef and or farmer, we were so inspired, we wanted to go to the next one. And finally we said, okay, we got to stop. But at first we started asking farmers for their favorite recipes. And what we found is, again, it goes to what we said earlier, farmers work so hard. They're working 24/7. And by the way, you think, okay, it's the winter, farmers aren't doing anything. The shoulder seasons, going to the fall, winter, as well as well into the spring, are now being used by small family farms because they now realize that they can get low tunnels, high tunnels, greenhouses, and really extend the season. So they're farming often 3/4 of the year. You're going, jump in.
And we were actually interviewed by a Washington, D.C. Podcast the other day, and the host asked the same question. And then she made the comment, farmers are farmers. They're really good at growing food. They're not chefs. I mean, look at what Tom just did. So they're very different skills. And that's why we went to a friend we knew from the Berkshires, Chef Brian Alberg. And we asked Brian to create recipes inspired by what the farmers we met grew or raised, or stories they told us about what they were eating. For example, Hawk Dance Farm, which Elisa told you about, when we showed up there, they were actually cooking beet pancakes. And so that kind of inspired that beet latkes story. The question about how we organize the cookbook, do you want to talk about that a little bit? Or how did we organize it?
In terms of sections?
Well, one thing, our book is 2 books in one.
Yeah.
It's really 125, we think, really accessible recipes, and we're proud of them. But it's also a story. It's a story about small family farms. So what we were trying to do, and what I think we're able to do, was to intersperse the stories of the farms with a recipe. So each section, whether it's breakfast or pasta or meat or poultry, whatever, there'll be recipes about, that section, but then there'll also be a story about what the farmer who's growing that product. And that's how we organized it.
Thanks for asking.
Thank you guys for that. One thing, of course, with our awesome students that are here, of course, we are with this lovely, amazing university that is preaching so much to our younger, very enlightened, I would say, students. Very blessed to be here for them. But you say in your book that the average age of farmers is 60. How do we get younger people to go into farming?
Yeah.
Do you answer
that? Sure. I mean, it's as I mentioned, getting land is such a challenge. It's affordability is such a problem, especially in Massachusetts, in our area. There are a number of programs. UMass has a terrific ag program. So some younger people who go through that program, some of the farmers that we interviewed went through the UMass program. That's where they got their training. If you don't grow up on a farm, and most family, kids are not growing up on farms, you got to learn somewhere. So that's one place. Certainly learning. There are mentors, apprenticeship programs all over the place. There are a lot of nonprofits and foundations that provide support for younger people who want to go into farming. Elisa, you want to mention some other ways that younger people can get in?
So by the way, we had farmers who would tell us that they learned, younger farmers, that they learned literally by going to, the county extension units of the Department of Agriculture. A lot of them went online. There's a shiitake mushroom farmer who was a logger, and he literally learned online how to grow shiitakes, and it grows incredibly shiitake mushrooms on logs. But it's really an issue. The issue of younger people going into farming is a real problem. And part of the reason is it is so difficult, and it's not a way to make money. Yeah. And so there's a whole larger story, which people can research online and look into, of how we need to support as a society and as a government small family farms, because what they're doing is so wonderful for all the ways that we spoke about, as opposed to large scale commercial agriculture, which of course I'm sure there's some benefits, but there's a lot of drawbacks. And these small family farms need to be supported in the way that big ag is supported, for people to make it feasible to go into farming. And I'll give a shout out to somebody who's on this call, Steve Picheni from Great Barrington, who I know is working and trying to do what he can to bring our community together in the Berkshires and better support younger farmers, family farms, really to almost create a center to help people access the resources they need. So yeah, it's a great question. It's a big challenge. There are people who are meeting the challenge, but more people must get involved in this if we're going to survive, because we can't rely on the big agribusiness to feed us. We've seen that in the pandemic. Great question. Thank you.
So unfortunately, we are running out of time, but this is for everyone who is still with us. We are so, again, I say blessed a lot because I feel like that's something we need in COVID times. We are blessed to be able to give away 10 of the Berkshire Farm Table Cookbooks to wonderful people who are in our chat. Now, I ask, if possible, if you are a student first, if you can text in the chat to let me know that you're a student. And I'm going to give you an email that you can send straight, or an email address that sends straight to me. Say you won. We're going to figure out how to you will come onto campus to pick them up either at the end of this year or the beginning of the next. We just, we're going to try to make it a little easier. So unfortunately, if you are out of state, we don't have a shipping process at the moment in time. But if you are a student, if you could write in the chat, just I'm a student, and you win one of these wonderful books. I'm going to give that a hot second. And then I'm going to reach out to, if you are, staff, faculty and staff. Now, if you are also here, because it's going to be the first 10 that I get in the chat, just say faculty, staff. Oh, I got a student, I got staff. All right, first 10. I know it's like a run to the thing. Oh goodness, student, yay, yay, yay. Just go top to bottom. Guys. Just keep going, people, keep going. Yeah. I am going to take the students first, so that's just a thing. Sorry, guys. I know that they're interested, and there are 125 amazing recipes in here, and so many about all of the local farms that you guys worked with, which I still am only halfway through. But thank you guys so much for attending this lovely, lovely, lovely recipe demonstration, and a lot of information that I know that we're grateful to have. And so I'm just going to end this meeting. I'm going to look to the chat to make sure to end this meeting. And thank you again, Rob, Elisa. Thank you so much for your time.
We appreciate it. We hope that you all will check out our website, berkshiresandbeyond.com, and it connects to our Instagram, Facebook. We have a lot of up-to-date information about buying local and farmers and wonderful recipes. So we hope that you guys will join us.
I just want to join in the thank you both to Erica, Chef Tom,
thank you
the
for
whole staff.
hosting
You've been
us.
wonderful. I just have to say one thing though. We're so taken by what Northeastern does in terms of this whole exhibition kitchen. I just, kudos to you as a university. It's really, really impressive. Yeah. And thanks for inviting us.
Very professional, and we enjoyed it very much. And we'll come back. Just let us know.
Take care.
Thank you all.